Jeannie.
Hi, Jeannie.
Oh, good, Jeannie.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Hey, George.
Mr. Capasso, how are you?
I'm just doing terrific.
Excellent. I was hoping so.
All right, we are now live on YouTube, so take it away whenever you'd like.
We'd like to call this meeting of the planning board for December 7th, 2020, 7 p.m. via Zoom. And I would ask the board if they indulge me with a moment of silence for the late Jim Sopa, who was, I guess, glorified building inspector, but with many hats and greatly missed. And we would like a moment of silence. May his soul rest in peace.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen. Good man.
All right. Mr. Matt, could you call the roll of members?
Yeah, do you want to do the roll first or the little blurb?
No, you do the members first.
All righty.
Please.
Leo Pisano.
Yeah.
Michael O'Connor.
Yeah.
Cheyenne Rangel.
Here.
George D'Angelo.
Here.
James Tarr.
Here.
Phil Mastrocola. I don't see Phil. Chairman Frederick Cafasso.
Present.
We do have a quorum. I'll
Can
just
you read the
read.
disclaimer, please?
You got it. In response to Governor Baker's declaration of a public health emergency and the related emergency executive order dated March 12, 2020, the Everett Planning Board shall be meeting remotely until further notice. The audio conferencing application, Zoom, will be used for this purpose. An online link and telephone access number will be provided on all meeting agendas and also on the city's website. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the city's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. This application will permit the public to access and participate in future board meetings and hearings. Instructions for joining meetings in this manner will be provided on the city and city clerk's websites. We extend our thanks for your understanding and participation in this manner, which is intended to keep members of the board and the public safe. Thank you.
Thank you. First order of business, please.
Mr. Chair, the first order of business is an informal introduction and a vote on peer review for 2nd and Vine Street. The applicant will make a presentation regarding a proposal to construct a mixed-use property with approximately 350 units of housing with retail. The planning board shall vote to determine a suitable amount of funds that the applicant shall provide for peer review. This is continued from an October 13th, 2020 meeting.
Thank you. We are
Thank
open
you.
to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Johanna Schneider. I'm the project attorney, and I'm here on behalf of 2nd and Vine LLC. With me tonight, somewhere out there, is the project developer, John Block. Hey, John. We were last before the board on October 13th, at which time we gave an introductory presentation regarding our proposal. As a reminder, the project is approximately 320 residential units located at the junction of 2nd, Vine, and Boston Streets, and it's located within the CTE-DD. On October 29th, we submitted an application for site plan review and for an inclusionary zoning special permit. We had hoped that the board would be able to open a hearing on the project tonight and that we would make our first formal presentation, but we understand that due to a notice issue, we're not able to do so this evening. Because the board has already seen our informal presentation in the interest of time, we will defer making a presentation until the January 11th hearing when we hope to be on the board's agenda. But in order to make up some time, we are tonight respectfully requesting that the board vote to determine a suitable amount of funds for us to deposit with the city for a peer review. I think in an ideal world, we would have peer review comments before the meeting on January 11th so that we can have a productive conversation with the board at that time regarding traffic and civil and any other peer reviews that the planning staff deems appropriate at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Can you
Yes,
please recognize that Philip Mastrocola has arrived at the meeting?
Phil Mastrocola, you here?
I'm here, present.
So noted. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
D'Angelo.
you.
You're very observant tonight.
Well, I didn't want him to get tossed out of the meeting like I did.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You both got beards. That must be a beard thing.
Sorry.
All right, any questions, comments, any? The board?
The peer
Mr.
review,
Latanzi, do we have a monetary figure that might be?
I think the
Adaptable.
standard that we've been going with for projects of roughly this size has been 25,000 set aside, and then if we go over that amount, to request more. But I think we usually start with about 25,000.
Is the proponent okay with that?
Don, is that acceptable to you?
Yes, I think if that is the standard for past few projects, we're fine with using a similar figure.
Thank you. Any
And
other?
just to, oh, sorry to interrupt. This is Robin Stein from KP Law. Just to clarify, I think folks know the city staff is a little bit low in the planning department right now. And so we anticipate the peer review might be a broader scope than some prior projects, including, civil, traffic. It may extend to some other areas as well. It'll include legal like it usually does. That's not exclusive, but I wanted to mention it.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you. So do we have a motion? Are we going to entertain a motion tonight?
well, I guess we'll have a motion for the applicant to post $25,000 for a peer review for the project at Second and Vale Street.
Second the motion.
A motion has been made and seconded to allocate 25,000 for the project at Second and
Vine.
what else?
Vine
Vine
Street.
Street.
Fine.
Second and Vine.
Vine and Garden, correct?
Second, Vine and
Well,
Boston.
second Vine.
All right, the motion is,
Second Vine and,
And Boston.
that's it. And Boston, thank you.
all right, the motion made and seconded. I'll
Roll call vote,
roll call. Leo Pisano,
Yes.
Michael O'Connor,
Yes.
Cheyenne Rangel,
Yes.
George D'Angelo,
Yes.
and Chairman Cafaso.
yes. Motion has passed. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, item 2 on old business is a site plan review and dimensional special permits for 1690 Revere Beach Parkway. This is a proposal to build 800 transit-oriented development residential units with 15,000, that's a mistype, 15,000 square feet of commercial space, 5,000 square feet of which is located in Chelsea, with 3 of the buildings in Everett and 1 in Chelsea, as shown on plans entitled Proposed Site Documents for Grossman Companies, Inc., Proposed Mixed-Use Development, known as the site plan, on a parcel shown on the site plan being a parcel of land referenced by Assessor's Department as K0-04-000084, located in the Commercial Triangle Economic Development District. This is continued from the November 10th, 2020 meeting.
Thank you. So we are back opened for that parcel. Is the proponent here?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, David O'Neill, representing the petitioner, the applicant, Everett Holdings LLC, represented by the Grossman Companies. We're pleased to be back here tonight. I can't really state the loss that we're all feeling, still fresh with Jim's loss. So thank you for that, your moment of silence. So this project, we did have the great opportunity to at least get started with Jim on it. And I know we've got a long way to go, but his hand has been in a healthy start here. So with me tonight from the project team is some faces that have become familiar to us from this and other project: Avi Shaw, Jake Grossman of the Grossman Company, Greg Sampson of Brown Rudnick, our engineers Zach Richards and Steve Martirano of Bowler, Joel Bargman of BH Plus Archetype Architects, and Sean Kelly of Vanas Associates, who's made it back here tonight, and I apologize if I've left anyone out. So the introduction to the project, I'm sure the nuts and bolts of the project are fresh in your minds. A large development, 800 units, 15,000 square feet of retail space, and a really exciting concept that we've all had the pleasure of watching our architect Joel Bargman walk us through on a couple of occasions. So since our last meeting, we've been productive. I'm told that Sergeant Gaff had an opportunity, and good to see Sergeant Gaff not out on the
Good to see
on the
Mr.
beat
O'Neill.
tonight, safely inside. He's not going to be called to duty momentarily. Although I guess we should knock on wood. But I think our teams had a chance to speak with Sergeant Gaff on some of his concerns, and my report back from Sean Kelly of Vanas was that it was a productive and a supportive conversation. But if there's anything further of that, we can certainly address it. The other items that have gone on since our last meeting were we've had the opportunity to submit through council some draft conditions to help us with the ultimate writing of the decision that will reflect the board's position on this. And we really, some of the things that have come to light, and I know Attorney Stein is on the call, and we've had some opportunity to speak with her as we develop that decision language. Where we are before the board asking for, again, those 4 areas of special permit, specifically on the issue of increasing our floor area ratio, which is going to be proposed at 4.7 to 1, which is within the 6.1 authority given to the planning board under that provision. Special permit to reduce side yard setback down to 4.8 feet. The statute or the ordinance allows the board to go to 4 feet. So again, we're well within that special permit granting range. We're asking that the board allow our height of building 3, and I'm sure everyone remembers this is a 3-building development with a grand causeway between them. The building 3, we're ultimately going to be a variance for that, but the planning board under the special permit granting authority has the authority to go up to 100 feet, which is what we're asking for. And finally, we're asking for a reduction in required parking allotment. And the statute, the ordinance allows us, the board, upon request and justification, to reduce the number of parking spots from the required amount down 25%. The required amount of parking would be 923, and we are asking that the board approve 881 spots for this parking, for parking on this project, which would be about a 5% reduction, well inside the 25% that is the board's authority to grant. So that's that's where we are tonight. And I know I kind of jumped over having any comment from our development team, and I know you guys have gotten to know Avi a little bit, and goes without saying, you know the Bowler team as well. So I just wanted to kind of bring you up to speed on where we are. I think all of the other concerns have been addressed. There was some question of what was our actual number of parking spots being requested and what was the relief figure. And that's we've come to that 881 figure, which will all be located on our site. And there's not a question of us, counting street parking that's within our property, whether it's public way or private way, toward that number. That's a comfortable number that we can easily fit or adequately fit on our site. I know that there are things that are, I don't want to presume that there are not things that the board has questions about. We've got the team assembled again, so we're here to answer any questions that we have. Ultimately, of course, our goal is to get a vote on those, on approval of our site plan as previously presented, and a request for those items of relief that we've enumerated and put before the board. So that is really all we have to say. We're willing to and happy to respond to anything that the board might have, and we are at your service.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. O'Neill.
You're welcome, Mr. Fossey.
If I may start, Mr. Chairman, the first thing that I have a problem with down there is it flooded again down there, as Sergeant Gaff points out. This is our third project in that area, starting with the Pioneer, going to the Woodways project, and now your project. And this flooding issue was supposed to have been rectified a while ago. I don't know why it hasn't. And whose shoulders is this going to fall on now? Yours, Mr. O'Neill, your applicant? Because you certainly can't be building down there if the street floods. We went through this with the Pioneer. That was supposed to all been corrected. And I guess I have to ask the city itself, City of Everett, why wasn't that taken care of during that project? Chelsea was to put a whole new infrastructure down on Locust Street to handle all this flooding. Now it's flooding again. Now we got another applicant here, wants to build 800 units and on a street that floods, with the whole thought being that these residents are going to simply walk up Vale Street to go up to the Silver Line up in Chelsea. How are they going to get there when the street's flooded? That's going to be the issue. Are they going to all have to walk down the Parkway and walk up Everett Avenue? So we have to ask the city, who's taking care of the flooding issue? Why isn't it taken care of? And maybe, Mr. O'Neill, your engineers can look into it, but I can't see building another project down there on a street that floods until it's taken care of. That's one issue I have with it. The second one, I think Sergeant Gaff will pick up on. He talked about some traffic lights at the intersections of Vale and Boston. I don't know if we actually need, per se, to put these there actively, but certainly that the applicant can put that into their scope to have this whole intersection wired, if not poles put up for the future use. Should that intersection become a problem, that we won't be tearing up a whole new street to put in street lights. So if I'm correct on that, Sergeant Gaff, is that what you were looking for? Some kind of, if it becomes a problem, we should have a set of traffic lights there ready and to go to resolve the issue. And now, not only, as I went down Vale the other day, not only is we looking at this project and we're looking at Woodways, there's another project going on down there in the Chelsea side. I hope everybody's aware of that. That's another building going up. So there'll be 5 apartment buildings utilizing Vale Street for pedestrian traffic, because they're all saying the same thing. Everybody's going to walk up to the Silver Line. Boy, there's going to be one crowded station up there, which I've hopped on constantly. No one seems to pay attention. I asked this applicant to look at the MBTA. Are they going to handle all these people? Well, maybe they'll handle these people. Who's gonna handle when Woodway shows up? Or when the other project that no one knows about back at Siegel and Ostovich's junkyard? That's where the project, another one in Chelsea. Has the city of Everett gotten a hold of Chelsea, their planning department, and say, what did you do to mitigate the pedestrian traffic problem down there? All our people from Everett have to walk down Vale Street. Are we going to be able to have these people safely walk down Vale Street? Are we going to all walk them up to the Silver Line, and they're all going to stand there, 1,000 people every morning? I'm only bringing these issues up. I don't ever see them getting resolved. And when the day comes, when all these 5 or 6 huge projects come online, and you can't get down Vale Street, Sergeant Gaff's the first one to bring it up. It's going to be a problem, and I've mentioned it since day one. So I don't know where to go with it. We got a flooding issue. We got a traffic issue. We got more apartments going up. Anyway, we'll talk about that as we go along. And as far as my opinion is concerned on these special permits, Mr. O'Neill, that you're looking for, I don't have a problem with the reduction in parking as long as it's well within that 5% parameter. As far as the floor area ratio is concerned, that seems to be okay. We've certainly given it to other ones. The setback, I don't see that being an issue, but I do have a definite issue with the height. Now let's talk about the height for 1 minute. I think the code down there is 85. You want to go to 100, Mr. O'Neill, is that correct? But that's
correct.
not the special permit you're looking for. You're looking to go to 135.
Well, we're asking this board on the issue of height to give us, grant a special permit to go to that 100-foot limit, which is within this board's special granting authority.
Okay. Wasn't there mention along the line of building 3 going to 135 feet?
Correct. So that's our plan. While we're before this board, we're asking to get the relief that you can give us, which is up to 100, and we will be in our filings with the building department asking for a height of 133 feet, which will require us to seek a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals to go up to that figure,
Okay, so-
that height.
So that 100, the difference between 100 and 135, 32 feet, that's not a special permit. That's a variance that you want granted.
Correct, and we're premature to ask for that because that variance can only be requested after a denial of our building permit, which we cannot apply for until we submit building plans. But interestingly on that, and not to cut off any of your conversation, when we were speaking to that possibility of going up to that height, one of the things that Mr. Soper pointed out was that when you start getting to those heights, the life safety requirements under the code make for a much safer building. The construction goes from, and I'm certainly out of my depth to comment on it, from largely wood construction to steel construction, and the safety features of a taller building pay dividends in the long run in terms of the building safety. So yeah, so our request to this board is for that 15-foot increase over the 85-foot by right figure. It's 15 feet. It's not a huge variance from or differential from the 85-foot by right figure, but we are asking for that relief from this board under your special permit granting authority.
And if we granted that, if we granted all your variances, let's say, you still have to go in front of the Zoning Board of Appeal.
That's correct.
And I just want to be as honest as possible with you. We make recommendations to them for the variances that you're looking for, and I would be strongly opposed to granting you my okay on to go to 132 feet. So my recommendation would be not to grant a variance for that. I don't think I have a problem on the 4 of them. Each member will have their own opinion on that. We can vote individually on each one. So I'm just saying to you, you get to 100, I really think that's kind of it, as far as I'm concerned. You've reached the limit. And you're right, Mr. O'Neill, when you get up any higher, you're going to a high rise. You're going into another whole terminology with the fire department, life safety. It's just another world out there. But that, again, that's not our problem. So just letting you know, I wouldn't be negative to the 4 variances the 4 special permits you're looking for. I would definitely have a problem allowing you to go to 132 feet. So with that in mind, that's about all I really have to say, other than I see Jay Monty cutting in there. Jay, I don't know if you can hear us, but I brought up this flooding issue problem. Joe Gavin brought it up. City has to look into this, because how are you going to let this project go if we're still having flooding issues down there that should have been resolved by now? So
I know Greg Lewis was working on this before his departure. And I know the development team should probably chime in here as well, because I know they were doing some work with Greg on that. Yep. Some of that is endemic to the larger system, and the tide gate that Greg was working on and the culvert, Market Street culvert, those are all interrelated. So it's a much bigger project than any one development. That said, Vale Street was raised on the Chelsea side as part of that development, I believe, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the proposal here was to raise Vale Street on the Everett side for wood waste and for this project. Is that correct?
Well, we're supposed to. They haven't raised the street down there yet.
Not yet, right? But under their permit, they are required to raise the street, correct?
I don't know about Chelsea. We do, but when we started with wood waste way back when, yes, they had gotten together with the city of Chelsea. And like I say, the whole new culvert was supposed to be put in on Locust Street. It's exactly where these people are going to be. And that was going to pick up all the water off of Everett Avenue and divert it to out into the Mystic River somewhere, out to the headwall out there. And if that hasn't happened, when is it going to happen? And I hope it's not going to bother these people with their application down there with their building. Are we going to have it so that becomes a dry street eventually? It's all we want. It's all I want to know is who's going to
ask the development team just to chime in and just talk about what they're doing for drainage.
Yes. Hi. Thanks, Jay. This is Avi Shas from the Grossman Companies. That everything that you've said are discussions, Mr. Pisano, are discussions that we've had with Jim Soper and Greg St. Louis and the planning department as this process has progressed over the last 6 months. So just to try to go back and handle them one at a time. The flooding issue that you mentioned is something that, as Jay mentioned, we had been working. Steve Moderano can provide some detail, but we had been working very closely with DPW and Greg St. Louis to help the process of installing the culvert under the MBTA line, which would be a large reliever of the flooding. One of the problems, as he described to us, was that the waters were getting trapped in the commercial triangle because of the raised MBTA line. So that's one item, and we have been working our drainage in concert with what his desires were. With respect to the Chelsea side of the line and the Everett side of the line, we also designed our project to the FEMA floodplain, which has been established in Chelsea. And our understanding from again working with Greg was that Everett would be also adopting that FEMA floodplain. So we set that across the entirety of our project. That means that all of the material program spaces beyond just kind of lobbies and entrances would be located well outside of that area. Now, obviously that had a disadvantage for our project, given that the grades are low. We're raising the buildings artificially higher. That's one of the actual reasons why we're seeking the special permits for the smaller buildings. Now, Dave was 100% correct in his comments from Jim, who again, I can't even begin to to quantify the loss in just every respect, but his comment to me was I prefer the taller buildings, the above the 85-foot buildings, because they are a much safer building. It is, you go from the wood construction, the type 3 construction, to the type 1 construction, and everybody's safer. It's better for the fire department. It's better for everybody. So, I agree. And, I totally understand your reservations about building 3, but again, that was something that we talked to Jim about going, to ZBA, not necessarily immediately, but in the future as we got closer to that phase of the project. So that said, I guess that's the height issue or the height special permit question in the drainage. And with respect to our really, quite a productive meeting, Sergeant Gaff has his finger on the pulse of all traffic down there, and I agree with him. It is kind of a mess, and we support the city's position on the reduction of the parking and keeping the parking out of the public way. And what we said to him and we'll say to you is that the goal of this project is not to have our residents walking down a street. We are adding sidewalks and putting retail along that street as well, which will help, but walking through a flooded out road that's crammed with cars and no one can drive around. So everything that Bowler has designed and everything that we've put forward would be just a leaps and bounds improvement over what's there. All the parking gets pulled off of the road. It gets kind of tucked into recesses, as we discussed with Sergeant Gaff. We're studying and we're looking at all of the sight lines to make sure that the entrances and exits from the property on Boston Street are as safe as possible, and would like to, after we get through our site plan approval, be able to get into the conversations and even have Sergeant Gaff with us at some of those conversations with MassDOT to talk about the impacts there, since they have some jurisdiction, obviously over the parkway side of the project. So that said, I would tend to agree with all of your comments, and it's hard given the change in some of the faces, or some of the faces that aren't with us today to discuss, but obviously we will pick up the effort to make the whole commercial triangle, not just our property, as positive of an impact as possible. We do know that Fairfield had done some of the work as part of their Chelsea scope on the drainage, and we fully intend to make that part of our effort too, to mitigate any negative impacts on Vale Street, and put the money that we would be otherwise putting into drainage upgrades in the city into what was and Steve Moderano and Jay Monty should be able to attest, one of Greg St. Louis's big move projects was getting that drainage down out of this commercial triangle region and under the MBTA line to really provide that relief valve for flooding in the area. And we're fully supportive of that. We saw a lot of his plans on that. So I'll let Steve talk a little bit more specifically about that, but hopefully I've addressed, at least on the surface, Mr. Pisano, your initial questions.
Well, you're right, Mr. Shaw. Your company's kind of getting shortchanged here, I think, a little bit, is that the Woodways project came before us probably 5 years ago, maybe less. And then it took us over a year to get that satisfied to the point where everybody agreed, particularly the applicant, obviously, to actually tear up Vale Street to completely redo the infrastructure. Now, that hasn't been done. Or has it? I don't know. I have to say, like you said, you were correct. A lot of the faces aren't with us that were back then, that made a lot of guarantees of what would be done. So you people are walking in there raising your elevation to what, 11 now? Floodplain 11? And that was all discussed way back then. That's where the whole thing came to light. And it was, okay, let's open up Vale Street. Let's raise it up. All new drainage pipes through there, culverts. Everything was promised. Nothing's been done. And then you
Yeah.
come along and you're going to get kind of stuck saying, hey, I've done my.
I wholeheartedly agree.
That will work, but it only will work if you have the pipes to tie into. And I
Right.
don't see them there. And I don't see them getting in there until maybe Woodways fills their obligation of building that building and doing their work. So how do you put up a building tying into a system that doesn't work? That's all I'm at. And I'm not asking you, really, you should be very well aware of it. I'm asking the city of Everett. What is the city of Everett going to do to facilitate your project going forward and not having it be caught up in a floodplain later on? And I'm concerned for your project. And I think the city of Everett's got a lot on their plate to get some of these promises that were made a long time ago to come to fruition, to get it done, fruition.
And if I could jump in, Mr. Pisano, I think a lot of the conversations I had with Greg St. Louis before he departed was exactly what you said, is how do you get the water out of here? What are the moves we need to make? It's not a single pipe in one place. It's not just at Vale Street, it's all the downstream infrastructure and some of the things that they've done, and they have been making improvements. There was apparently a 6-foot root ball that blocked the line going through Chelsea that the Fairfield project took out and replaced that section of pipe. So that was corrected. Greg St. Louis was aware that another building had put some footings in and put one through one of the downstream mains and blocked the entire main. I don't know where that stands, but the city was working with that owner to get that obviously rectified and out of the pipe and the pipe repaired. So there's some capacity things that have been identified. Some have been rectified and some they're working on rectifying. And then the bigger play issues that the city's been working on with the MBTA is getting new pipes under the train tracks, which really limits the capacity of getting drainage out of the area. And I believe Greg St. Louis is very close to getting at least a couple of new pipes that the state was going to jack under the train tracks. And that creates capacity to then get into adding new drain mains. And the idea was possibly one going straight up Boston Street, which would help alleviate a lot of water trying to get through the Vale Street infrastructure. So you're right, it's not one single piece. But there is a lot of movement that's been happening, but the city's been identifying downstream issues that also need to be rectified to realize the full benefit of the work that's been done. The Fairfield project also did raise Vale Street, but only about a foot, I think, based on my observations. And so there may be some opportunity to continue raising that, but I think the real issue is getting that pipe capacity. And ultimately, you need to get the capacity under the railroad tracks because that's been lost over time from a very large opening down to a single crossing that is not adequately sized. So I know Greg St. Louis was pursuing 2 or 3 new crossings under the railroad tracks, but hopeful to get one in short order, possibly 2021. So it's a complicated puzzle, and I'm sure the new director coming in, when they come in, may have different thoughts on how that comes together, and we'll continue working on that with the new director. But the site itself is going to have some modest improvements to what comes off the property. But the big issue with the Vale Street flooding is how do we work with the city to participate in some of these larger infrastructure efforts that are so badly needed. And some are not relative to the city. There's some private properties that need to correct things that were mistakenly done, but some large municipal efforts and probably some encouragement to make the state make those crossings happen. So,
Can I ask you a question? So, to me, the big issue is what's coming off the site. And I apologize, I'm speaking out of turn here. The roadway is really the city's responsibility at the end of the day. The drainage pipes as Leo mentioned, that's on the city. But what comes off your site is obviously, your responsibility. And, what comes off of the site does contribute to the flow of water going through those culverts and out to the river. Could you just explain, how you've improved the site, what percentage of reduction you've gotten from the current site as is today? Because that actually does factor into the flooding on Vale Street if you have, private property draining into the public system. If you've made improvements, I'd actually be curious to understand that a little better.
Yeah, and we're still working through that. Right now, the entire site goes out to Route 16. So that's under MassDOT's jurisdiction. There's a storm drain pump station, so it comes out at a very high rate of speed, but at certain points in time, it's not a constant outflow like a typical gravity system. So we're working with the state, and we were working with Greg St. Louis at the DPW to figure out what's the best approach. So the site itself, we are going to make sure that we meet the state stormwater handbook, and we'll have treatment devices. We've got some new phosphorus removal that doesn't exist, so some higher quality runoff coming off the property. And obviously a lot less surface parking lot, which right there is inherently a benefit to the water quality. As far as volumes, we're going to be effectively matching pre versus post. So not a decrease in the rate that it comes off, but we'll make sure it's at or just below those rates. So it's not great infiltration on the site. It's hard to make the water disappear. So it's really just about the treatment and the quality of it coming off. And then finding some new ways to create some capacity in the city system, and whether that's done utilizing some of the inflow and infiltration fees, which will be substantial, seven-figure fees for a project of this size. Part of the city's issue is not just this local area, but the city in general is trying to separate illegal flows or inflow and infiltration that shouldn't be in the sanitary sewer system and get it into the drain system. But that the capacity all comes through this area, and we don't have the capacity to continue doing that infiltration separation. So on top of trying to make the drainage better and improve the sewer system, we need to make the drainage capacity in this area, we being a partnership, us, the city, all the private developments, not just this one project, but how do you increase the capacity of drainage so you can meet not just your drainage goals, but also your sanitary sewer goals upstream? So the benefit on the drain system on site is the quality, hands down, and making sure we're not making anything worse by putting large underground detention systems to slow the rate down. But the capacity in this area is the biggest benefit to both the sewer and the drain system, and the site as well.
Steve, I think that the one key factor is that the drainage, it's not sheet drainage and it's not surface or infiltration drainage that's going to Vale. As we develop the site, all of the drainage, all the stormwater is being managed. So it's not being managed in a way that is allowing that water to collect on the surface on Vale. So to the point about our impact on Vale will be, will be completely cut off. So we will be managing our water. Right now, it's designed, in discussions with Greg, to go off to Revere Beach Parkway presently in a managed way. We would be, open to looking at proceeding down Boston Street should, the culvert with the MBTA right of way come to fruition, and we can participate in the, in the drainage in that sense. But to your question about its impact on Vale, we will not be impacting Vale with our drainage.
Correct. And even the runoff that goes out to Route 16 does loop around and ties into the city system, and ultimately gets to that railroad track where you need one of these crossings. So all that water converges, and it all comes into the same system. This area it really needs those crossings across the train tracks. That's how you relieve the flooding in Vale.
what would be the impact on your project? Say your project takes 2 years, start to finish, starting in the spring. Do you think all that, Steve, is gonna come together by the time your project is finished? In other words, your project's done in 2 years and you flush the toilets and they all back up because those drains ain't in right. You know what I'm saying? You guys are putting a lot on the line to say, yep, my building will be done in 2 years, but will the infrastructure to handle the water, whether it goes out to Route 16, which like you said, all loops back into the main pipe, which dumps out into the Mystic River. What happens if that's not done in time for you? That's all I'm saying. And we're a planning board. I'm not going to get into this whole thing. I've been into it too many years. 5 years we've been trying to handle Vale Street. And I'm going to leave it with the city. That's their problem, not the planning board. So I'm just, like I say again to Mr. Shaw, I'm concerned about your project. When it's done, are you going to be able to occupy it sanitary wise, that everything's going to flow? That's all. And again, you might not impact Vale Street, but Vale Street is going to impact you if it's not put together properly. And I don't want that to happen. It's not fair to your project. We've been down there 5 years now working on this. The city should have a lot more done, I guess. What else can I say? It should have been a lot further along than what it is. And we shouldn't be worrying about your project. Your project should just tie into a great system that should have been already built. And it's not, and I feel bad for you guys, so.
Well, we would certainly love that, Mr. Pisano. One of our first stops after this board sees fit to move us along is not just to continue our discussions with the sergeant, but to continue working diligently with DPW to make sure that everything does flow downhill and that we do have some, a positive outcome on Vale Street as well. So that said, not to mention the stops at the building department that we still have a ways to go, but those discussions with MassDOT and DPW and continued work with Sergeant Gaff's team and the building department can't start until we're on to the next chapter of the project.
Okay, then I would ask Matt, if we grant these special permits this evening, I feel we shouldn't grant your site plan review until a package is put together, because we seem to have a lot of empty spots. Just the traffic alone, we need conditions that when we say, okay, we're granting a site plan review with conditions, well, what are the conditions? They can't be brought up after we give you a site plan review. They should come up before. And that's always the way we do it. When we make a motion, site plan approval with conditions, what are the conditions? We'll talk about just the street light that Mr. Gaff and Sergeant Gaff's bringing up. Are you people going to go for that? This is what leaves later on, and someone says, well, we really didn't say we were gonna, but if we have it in writing, it resolves a lot of issues later on down the line. That's all. And I would like to say, if we gave you all these special permits, you could advance to the Zoning Board of Appeal. And then I know it's kind of a loop, but then after we have all the conditions that we can read them and understand them, and might only take another meeting, then grant you your site plan review. That's all. I'm not trying to hold you up, but I'm also saying, how do I say yes to something when we don't even know what we're saying yes to? We know when we understand your special permits, the 4 of them, that we understand. Yep. But with a lot of areas being left open, whatever, I just can't see giving you a site plan review until we get all the conditions written down and Matt is in the city is happy with it. That's all. So trying to be as fair as possible.
Yep, I understand. So David, you might want to jump in here because we did prepare at least the conditions that we knew about and provided those to KP Law for their review and for the board's review. So,
I can speak to that as well, if that's okay for you, Chair.
Yeah,
yes.
I've been working on a draft approval of this, including a lot of kind of the standard conditions that the board's put on prior projects. I think last Friday, we got some additional conditions proposed from the applicant. So we've been working our way through to revise those. I actually have a list of questions. So I was hoping tonight, and I know Matt has some questions as well, that we could ask some of those questions tonight, get some of those things addressed. And I think it probably makes sense that by the next meeting, you would have a complete decision in front of you,
That's what
both
we're
for the
looking
special
for.
permits. I mean, I was contemplating, it's really your call, one decision on the site plan and the special permits that would contain all the conditions together. And that way, everything is tied up in one decision with conditions that apply to all the permits. We've made a lot of progress on these. I'm sure everyone is aware there's been some limitations, just, with staffing and what have you. And unfortunately, obviously with Mr. Soper's passing, which was, I can't even say how horrible. But we've been working hard to get something together that we can get before the board. Like I said, we got comments from the applicant on Friday. And so we've been working already to get through those. I know Carrie Pike from Howard Stein Hudson had a couple comments on the proposed conditions. She had a couple additional conditions we can discuss tonight. And then we had a couple areas and points of clarification. So whenever you're ready, I can go through my list. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder now. I know Sergeant Gaff wanted to speak, but if you want to come back to me when you're ready, I can talk about some of the questions and just clarifications that I think we need to get this written up.
That's fine. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for a little package put together so we know what we're voting on.
And that's what we're working to get you.
Okay.
So I'm hoping tonight we'll be able to kind of have a good final conversation. There's just, like I said, some points of clarification, some things we need to verify and understand better. And then if the board feels like there's areas where they need additional review or additional peer review, we can talk about that tonight too. And we'll have plenty of time before the next meeting to get any final, I think, analysis looked at. I know, for example, that the applicants had proposed a condition related to stormwater that said that prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant will work with City Department of Public Works, the engineering office, to evaluate street flooding issues on Vale Street, and the applicant shall make reasonable modifications to the final stormwater management design on the site to minimize the potential for adverse flooding conditions in the area. That's definitely a general condition. I don't know if the board's looking for something more specific based on the conversation we just had, but that's something that they had proposed.
Well, the Vale Street really needs to be addressed, so.
Exactly, Mr. Chairman, exactly. That's the crux of the matter here. And again, we don't want this applicant to suffer for promises that were made years ago and should have been taken care of. Now, if it works, if it coincides with their project, that the city can make some kind of commitment to say, all this will be taken care of by the time Mr. Shaw's project comes online, then I think that's fair to them. That's all. And it's fair to the board. What are we going to do? Say, go ahead, build it, knowing that the infrastructure is not going to be ready for them? That's not fair.
The truth is that we are coming into the area with our eyes wide open, and okay. we do understand where the challenges are. From our side, we do have our civil and site engineering team working with the city, providing the resources and the knowledge that they bring to the table as well. But after the numerous discussions, for a couple months of back and forth, I know we are meeting with Greg St. Louis's team on a bi-weekly basis. So we were actually very comfortable with the direction that he was proposing, and it seemed, at least at the time, that we would be coming into a situation where the drainage was much better from his perspective. And I think Jay Monty pointed out, it's not just it is the city's road. However, it's not just about raising the road just kind of pushes the flooding problem further down. It's about the infrastructure, and we're committed to putting the large sums of money that our project would generate from the I&I fees towards that solution. And Greg was an ardent advocate of that being such a big impact and help to the to this kind of hyper local area, and we know Vale Street's an issue. So it's so I do appreciate everything that you're saying. We certainly also don't want to come in. You're probably spot on with 2 years down the road. Once we start, we don't want to come into a, I mean, granted, we might not have to provide the extra cost for a pool. We might have the pool over there ourselves, but we know that, and we don't want that. So we're going to avoid the, we're going to look to, to provide our engineering support to the team that you have, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
And if I could,
If I could just
add on.
let me just jump for a second, Stephen. The level of detail that these conditions put upon the project, these are not surprising to the developer. And we kind of refer to them as standard conditions, but that's how they've come about. And they require the developer to satisfy DPW and to satisfy ISD as these plans roll out. So I don't think I don't think I have experience with this board looking to drill down on these issues. We're referring them to staff and requiring us to work satisfactorily with the city on that. So, tying it up in a neat bow, well, the decision requires us to continue to work in good faith and get these things done to the satisfaction of city staff. I don't know that we have a need to drill down to a level of engineering detail that might satisfy us as we sit here that, yes, this will solve the Vale Street issue. We have to address it. We have to deal satisfactorily with the city staff requirements. And Steve, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, I was going to make the same point as our conversations with DPW was globally, here's all the challenges we have in this area. And as we work through the stormwater permit, which would be our next step with the infrastructure, the DPW reviews water, sewer, and drainage holistically before they issue a stormwater permit. So a lot of the how exactly are we going to participate in the area's improvements was going to be part of that stormwater permit. So I think exactly what Dave just said is this is not the end of the infrastructure conversation. It's more like the beginning of the technical drill down and what are the specific improvements that this project will be making to help facilitate the bigger goals of the area. So,
and I think that that's appropriate. And as Mr. Pisano, as you said, I don't think it, I don't think that the board would see fit to condition, one project and one developer with, fixing, the flooding on Vale Street, but that, the commitment and the condition that we would work with the city to do to do what is reasonable and spend our I&I fees and our money to in making, real corrective, valuable improvements versus other, associated I&I tasks that wouldn't have that impact. And I guess, from my perspective, I would, I understand that, there's conditions that need to be reviewed, and I understand the desire to have it all bundled up. And, I think that your concept of, voting on the special permits and then waiting for the site plan approval, my only comment is that we would look to do that at the next meeting versus going to ZBA, because we really can't start the next process without the site plan approval. So if the board saw fit to vote on the special permit items, that would be wonderful, and we would be wholly willing to to continue to work with KP Law to get the conditions written up to everybody's satisfaction and finalize things at the next meeting. Not dissimilar from any other project. Momentum is key, and we certainly have and will continue to work with at all levels of the city, all new members that come to these departments, and we'll be able to provide the resources that we bring to every meeting. So we'll bring our the full cadre of experts to to bear. So.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Stein, you have any comments?
I had a few questions if it's an appropriate time to run through them.
Please.
I just want to clarify a couple points. And again, I think regardless of whether it's separate votes on the special permit or the site plan, that you're going to have conditions on both of those decisions. So either way, my recommendation would be that that the actual votes of a written decision, in front of the board be taken at the next meeting when we can get everything in order. A couple quick questions. Some of this is just clarity. I know things change as we go. There were 2 letters, it looks to me, submitted before the November 10th meeting that talked about the parking. And I know the numbers have since changed, but I want to make sure the right letters are in the city's files. One of them referred to 901 parking spaces. One of them referred to 899 parking spaces. Can someone just clarify for me which is the right one so we can make sure to note that in the city's records?
The two numbers were 906 when we originally submitted, which was reduced to 899, which included 18 parking spaces, 12 of which were on Vale and 6 were on Locust. We've since removed the associated parking on Vale and Locust, and the number is now 881, which was described at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, so the 899 number was the one from November 10th. It came down to that.
Correct.
Okay, and then I know in the proposed conditions I saw, it said that building 1 was going to be 96 feet, but I think that November 10th letter said 92 feet. Can we just clarify the building height that you're looking for?
Yeah, I believe it's 96 feet.
Okay. So let me just make that change here in the draft. Okay. Let's see. So I know you're not looking to count the street parking spaces that you may be building as part of the parking counts, but my understanding is you're still intending to create new street parking as part of this project, correct?
It is street parking constructed in such a way that it is pulled off of the 2 lanes of traffic. So as the site plan shows, there will be 12 parking spaces, parallel parking spaces associated directly with the retail shops along Vale Street. And then on the private way, which is in Chelsea and technically part of the property, we will also have 6 additional parking spaces that are created in a parallel fashion that are not being counted, but constructed.
Are you proposing any kind of easement or anything to the city over those? I guess one question is just from a practical perspective on the ground. If they look like street parking, to what extent the city is going to be able to do any kind of parking management over those? I don't know, Jay, if you want to comment on that.
My concern generally is that, and it's just not just the parking, but also the sidewalk. My personal preference is that the sidewalk and the parking be part of the city right of way through either a permanent easement or donation, something of that sort. As Robert said, just for purposes of management and maintenance and that sort of thing. It's cleaner that way. Could you speak to that at all?
We certainly can, we look into that. I'm not seeing everybody on the Zoom, but I'm not 100% sure. I know that the parking, I believe, was in the city's right of way. The sidewalk may straddle the line. I don't have the drawings in front of us. My assumption is that it probably comes down to a liability thing. Obviously, we would be interested in having our retail shops clearing the sidewalks, but if the city wants to clear the sidewalks for them.
Well, no, they would still be required to clean the sidewalks, and actually I think from a liability perspective, my understanding is generally this would remove liability from you. If somebody were to slip and fall on a city sidewalk, versus a private sidewalk that actually
Yeah.
is better for you guys.
We don't have, I don't believe that we have a problem with it, but let me, since it appears that some of those conditions will be coming out in January, we'll have some time to get back to you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we can definitely talk about it. I wanted to just kind of introduce it and clarify it tonight. I'm correct that you still have to go through the city's process under general ordinance, chapter 15 and the related stormwater permitting, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Took care of that. So just a couple other quick things I was hoping we could clarify while we're all here. I know you folks recently submitted 2 alternative plans to MassDOT, and I was hoping that you could just discuss those, the purpose of the alternative plans. I don't think that it was clear necessarily that you were going to be presenting 2 different alternatives. So I want to make sure we're capturing accurately what you propose to MassDOT, what the consequences are, and then to the extent the board has a preference, that they have an opportunity to weigh in on one or the other of those. I know Carrie Pike is on the phone as well, on the call as well, so I'm sure she can comment to the board on that, but I was hoping we could just clarify that, please.
So at I believe it was 2 or 3 hearings ago, we presented a larger, more sweeping turn into the driveway off of Revere Beach Parkway. I believe comments made by Mr. Pisano with respect to traffic being impeded and accidents. One of the comments that was subsequently made by Ms. Pike from HSH was that the city was hoping to have 2-way bike lane traffic, unimpeded. And the one discussion that we had, that Sean and Carrie had was that there were a couple ways that could be solved, but ultimately the entrance to the property was in the MassDOT right of way, and they would be the authority having jurisdiction with respect to what that final outcome would be. We can't really have that conversation with them until we have site plan approval. So what we did was we provided 2 scenarios, both of which resolve the issue of 2-way bike lane traffic that Ms. Pike from HSH brought up. We have our preferred. I'm sure that Ms. Pike has her preferred option. We would have to get through site plan approval and make our formal presentation to MassDOT in order to understand which of those scenarios they would prefer. But one is 2 separated lanes, and one is lanes that are shared with the parking, similar to what we've shown on our site plan all along.
So if I could just clarify that. So my understanding was that all the bike facilities on the site were separated from traffic, that they were on a, protected or mostly protected, bike lane. Is that right?
It is, until you get into the MassDOT right of way, where it is a shared scenario because of the size of the entrance and the radius of the of that entrance. And but there was a grouping and a more protected version that were both shared with planning and the board and Ms. Pike to look at, and then ultimately the decision would be made by MassDOT.
So the difference on the 2 plans is entirely within the MassDOT right of way. Is that what?
Correct.
I'm hearing? Okay. All right.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? Because I'm looking at the plans and I guess I didn't realize that. To me, it looks like the difference goes back significantly beyond the MassDOT right of way along Revere Beach Parkway.
So the share, where the 2 lanes actually combine is where what I believe was designed as a speed table raises. So that seemed like the only area where the geometry worked for those to separate. But I believe that after that separation or inflection point, they both follow the same path down into the MassDOT right of way at the throat of Revere Beach Parkway. So one is a shared and one is a non-shared scenario.
Right, and I didn't recall seeing the Sharrow scenario, so that's why I was a little confused when I got these from Sean on Friday. That I thought we had always been looking at the option that has the bike lanes separated and off to one side. I think that was just why then when we were looking at the conditions between Robin and Jay and myself, we were confused. Because I agree, as Jay said, I think my preference would be that you have the separated bike facility as opposed to the Sharrows.
And if I'll add my 2 cents as well. It sounds like this is due to the fact that you're widening the driveway. Is that what precipitated that change?
I think it's at one our first design scheme was to have Sean, was it a 6 or an 8 foot? I believe it was a 2-lane, but it was both on the same side of traffic. And I believe that, in discussion with HSH having kind of the dedicated lanes was two-way traffic was something that we were to work on now, since they both come off of.
Right. No, I understand that. So, but in the shared option that I guess is a little new to us, was that necessitated because you're widening the driveway for a larger turning radius? Is that what happened?
Well, again, Sean Kelly with Vanassa Associates. I think it was a combination of things. We did do some geometric changes to soften that inbound curve, but you are correct. The overall width of the driveway itself was increased from, I think it was about 24 initially to 30 to provide additional width if we were to go with a shared approach where you'd have 15 feet to accommodate, both vehicular and bicycle traffic. The alternative plan, which I think, quite frankly, Mass DOT is likely to support, is to go with slightly more narrow lanes, 11 feet, which still accommodates the vehicular activity with the radii we're proposing, but would allow for an 8-foot exclusive bicycle lane to the eastern side, which will have less conflicts with inbound traffic versus outbound traffic.
Yeah, I mean, I would prefer that option as well, and certainly the board is free to vote their preference. But from my perspective, a wider driveway, a softer radius is a safety hazard to pedestrians and to non-motorized users. So while I understand that, you're trying to, lessen the impact to traffic, you're trading that off with creating a higher risk for, those on their feet or on a bicycle. So, again, I strongly prefer the separated option, the narrower option.
Okay.
If I might, this is kind of where conditions need to go. The conditions are in the decision, and it's our obligation to submit a plan that addresses these things. It doesn't. We've never resolved these things at the planning board level. The planning board is to identify and say that the ultimate construction of this property will be on these planning conditions. I think we're demonstrating why these final decisions and these conversations happen among staff in the city's professionals and the developers' professionals after the planning stage, after the planning board, so that we can move with some definitiveness and not, I'll speak for myself. This is far beyond any conception of a planning board analysis that I've ever encountered for a project of comparable size. We're creating a framework to say these are issues we have to address. Planning board, in all due respect, isn't to resolve those, it's to identify and say that the developer will satisfactorily meet the city's requirements. you're not giving us a ticket to go build this. You're creating a framework that says, hey, do this to our satisfaction along the way. The city always retains the ability to say, hey, that is not to our satisfaction. So, and maybe I understand why we're going down this. In the past, we've had a professional staff that would probably chime in right now and say, guys, we got this. We know what to do. Give us the site plan approval so that we can start working on it. I don't want to overstep, but I think I do want to encourage us to rein in what our focus is. We're always obliged and obligated to satisfy the city right up until the time the job is done, and maybe even afterwards. I've been on, I'm sure some of the members of the team have been on final walkthroughs with city staff when the project's already been done and things get changed. So, I'm just encouraging some perspective here of what our planning function is. Decisions with conditions, and the developer is required to continue to work up those conditions with the city staff to a satisfactory product. Robin, I know these questions are, I don't mean to interrupt you. If you have more of these questions, not my meeting.
Well, I do have a couple more questions, and as much as I appreciate your point, the purpose of my questions really is to give Jay and to give Carrie, while they're here with your folks, in the presence of the board that's going to issue these conditions, just a chance to talk through them. And I know you're presenting alternatives to MassDOT, but if the city felt strongly one way or another, I don't think there's any reason with them, any reason they can't
we'll have the
express
conversation now. We'll be here.
the preference. But I just have a couple more questions. I wanted to just identify while Carrie again is on the phone so we can talk about it. 2 additional conditions that she had, just to, if there's any initial questions you have with the board about those. I wanted to be able to actually make use of our time with the board tonight so that we would be ready to vote on the 11th. I had one question, and then I was going to introduce her 2 conditions. I think that's all I had. You had proposed a condition about potentially putting in an alert system at the project entrance for the crossing of the bicycle lane and pedestrian entrance. And I know that's something the board has discussed in prior applications, having some kind of warning light for pedestrians and bikers as they cross the project entrance. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know we put that in another project. I just had one quick question on the timing of that. You had proposed that if the city requests that at the time of the issuance of the building permit, is there a reason we can't push that time out? Because I don't know that necessarily when you're applying for your building permit.
You can push it out.
Okay.
It was a condition that you requested and we agreed to, kind of instantaneously. So at your discretion.
Excellent. Okay, because they may not know until some time if it's really needed. That might just be premature.
Of course.
And then I just wanted to introduce 2 more questions or 2 more conditions that Carrie had mentioned, and then if you have questions about them, she's here and you guys can talk about them. Carrie had asked about you doing a road safety audit at the intersection of Revere Beach Parkway and Everett Avenue in coordination with MassDOT, and submitting signal timing plans and analysis for the intersection of Revere Beach Parkway and Vale Street, with potential changes to the timing to improve the operation of the Vale Street northbound approach.
Yeah, so those were 2 things that were, I think, in the traffic report, and I didn't see them captured in the draft conditions, Mr. O'Neill, that you sent over. So I just wanted to confirm that those are part of the traffic mitigation package.
I could ask, is Sean able to comment on those?
Yes, and quite frankly, we've already begun work on the road safety audit, and we're close to getting submission into MassDOT. So that measure is already underway. And then we did, as part of the study, commit to working with MassDOT as part of our approval to look at the timing at Vale and Revere Beach Parkway, and really optimize that timing so it works as well as it can, given the current geometric constraints up there. So yeah, we have committed to those, and quite frankly, we've already initiated the work on the first one and expect to have a filing soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That covers the questions that, I guess the only other question I had, I know Sergeant Gaff is on the phone, and my understanding was that he may have some comments. So my only other question was to what extent there's anything that may need to get included in the decision from those conversations.
Sergeant Gaff, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I appreciate them meeting me down there. We had a great conversation. I just didn't know where they stood. We asked, when we talked, I think a couple of concerns after we talked still is switching the entrance and the exit. I know the original was that you were going to have the entrance right off of 16 on Vail. And then we talked about switching it because of the backup between Wendy's and if there's a line there, and then it's going to push it out to 16 to extend the entrance all the way down towards Boston Street down to Vail by the intersection. We were talking about swapping that. I don't know if you had a bigger conversation. And I really thinking about it more, that intersection needs to be addressed. And I'm not just saying by you, maybe by the city, but I think that it needs to be widened and some turn lanes should be put in there. There's some measurements that got to go on, some other stuff that probably on my engineering degree that I don't have. But there's some turn lanes I think that we can put in there to help out with sight lines. I just feel if you have that exit that comes out closer to the intersection of Boston and Vail, all it takes is one car to come out, can't get anywhere, and it causes the gridlock in the intersection. So that's the biggest questions we talked about.
Yep. So, and from our end, we thought that those were, they're all reasonable. Obviously, the issue, the inclusion of turn lanes where, one property has its full approvals and the other two properties are completely, have been built, puts the onus on turn lanes on the one property, which, is obviously, difficult, but,
yep.
It only helps one turn of 4, but it's something that we, agreed to look at. And if we had to, cut back our sidewalk at, to make that right turn, it really, or to provide a left turn lane onto Boston, then it's something that we would be willing to look at or be willing to get rid of, parking in front of the building on that side to address. I think it's something that needs to be worked out with Jay Monty and our engineering team, but it's something that we're open to.
And I agree with what Leo said, that it shouldn't all fall on you, right? So if we do a change, we're talking about Vail, everybody going down to the Silver Line, right? So, maybe we need coming up from Boston Street or right onto Vail to have a 2-lane churn there, and that would be on the new project that's going to be going on Woodwaste and that corner. So I'm not thinking that it should all fall on you, but I just think that there's some improvements that need to be made, whether it's the new signals like Mr. Pisano said, that they're put in place before, so we don't have to tear everything up. But I just don't feel that intersection is going to be able to handle everything. Not just, your project, we should be, it's going to be backup, but then we as a city have to look at the other projects that are coming down the line. And if we keep adding and adding and we don't do anything as a city, and then it's a lot of it to do with city, and I'll be sitting down with Jay Monty like we always do. And I just think that intersection needs to be addressed. And you already, you guys already know better than me than the flooding in Vail Street, and you guys working now. But I think that's the biggest thing that from our meeting, and it was and I appreciate you guys spending time, is that, the backup. I just don't want any gridlock with anybody exiting out of that exit that can't get across or wants to turn, and they just come out and next thing you know, they block that intersection because they can't turn left. Yep. And then the cars coming up, and then I think that helps if they're coming down. They will have to work with the exits of Wendy's and things like that. But I think you saw that that point I was making in our meeting. But those are the two big concerns. The other big concern is also that intersection, and I can sit down with Jay Monty and figure something. But I just think that intersection, with signage and lights or something, needs to be better.
Thank you. Any other comments, please?
That's a first. The cop doesn't get a comment back at him. That's a first.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for listening to us on behalf of Chief Mazie. He's aware of this and keeping him in the loop and stuff. So I really appreciate you folks listening to us on this matter, because usually we come down after it's all done, and it's nice to be able to have a little endpoint and let the engineers figure it out in the planning board. So on behalf of the EPD folks, we really appreciate your time letting us come in on this.
Of course.
Thank you, Sergeant. We appreciate your input.
We're happy to
Obviously,
have you. We will do what our part to make that better. Whether that is a condition or of a site plan approval or a part of our building permit process and our DPW process with respect to the drainage and all that. I think that's ultimately the question, but we'll certainly do our part.
I appreciate it. And if I would just like the board to know that the group that I met with down there at Stop and Shop, we were there for about an hour. They were very, very helpful in taking some of the things we were talking about. It was a great verse. I think the board should know that they did spend time down there with me, and I want that to be acknowledged to the board that they spent extra time with me down there. So to the group, thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Gaff.
Do you folks need me anymore?
I think you really.
All right. Well, if I don't see you folks, make sure you have a great holiday. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Sergeant.
Okay, we've heard some comments tonight. Ms. Stein,
Yes, sir.
what do you, as a recommendation, what is
Well,
your recommendation for this evening?
One, I think the public hearing is still open, so I just recommend that you check to see if there's any members of the public that have any comments while they're here. And then I think again, my recommendation is that you give this one more continuance so that we can get a final decision on all of the pending relief before the board, consistent with what Leo said earlier. And my only final question would be, to the extent that the board has any particular comments or findings about this project that it would like to see in a draft decision, I'd be happy to hear those as well.
Thank you. Is there anyone out there who would like to make comments on this public hearing? Having none at this time, the chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion for continuance to January 11th on Zoom at 7 p.m., at which time KP Law will submit a package of conditions which will allow us to vote on the site plan review and dimensional special permits that evening.
Second the motion.
A motion has been made and seconded to continue this project until January 11th, as noted. Roll call vote.
Leo Pizzano,
Yes.
Michael O'Connor,
Yes.
Cheyenne Rangel,
Yes.
George D'Angelo,
Yes.
and Chairman Kafaza.
Yes. Motion has been continued.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, council.
Have a great holiday.
You too. Thank you.
Thank
Rob.
you.
Thank you all.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Next order of business, please.
Mr. Chair, next order of business, item number 3 is a site plan review for 34 Market Street. This is a proposal for the redevelopment of the parcel, including the demolition of an existing 69,200 square foot warehouse and the construction of a one-story, 221,800 square foot last mile distribution warehouse located at 34 Market Street, that being a parcel of land referenced by Assessor's Department as H0-17 000076. The matter was continued from the November 10th, 2020 meeting.
Thank you. Are the proponents here?
Yep, right here, Rick Latini. Good evening. I'm Rick Latini with Howard Stein Hudson. I'm with the civil engineer for the project, but I'm here representing Div BMT LLC, the owner and applicant. We were here on November 10th, and at that meeting, you voted for a peer review, and the peer review is not going to come back till December 14th, so we are respectfully asking to be continued to your January 11th hearing, so we have time to get those responses into the peer review, which, like I said, is coming the 14th. So,
Thank you, Mr. Lentini. We have a motion on that, please?
Motion for continuance to January 11th on Zoom at 7 PM for site plan review, 34 Market Street.
Second motion.
Motion has been made and seconded to continue 34 Market Street to January 11th. Roll call vote, please.
Leo Pisano,
Yes.
Michael O'Connor,
Yes.
Cheyenne Rangle,
Yes.
George D'Angelo,
Yes.
and Chairman Cafaso.
Yes. Motion is continued.
okay, thank you. We'll see you next month after the holidays. Bye.
Thank you. Enjoy the holidays.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Next order of business, item number 4. This is a site plan review for 48 Nickel Street. This is a proposal for redevelopment, including the demolition of an existing single-family house and the construction of a new 3-story, 6-unit residential building located at 48 Nickel Street, that being a parcel of land referenced by Assessor's Department as M0-08-000178. This is a matter continued from the November 10th, 2020 meeting.
Thank you. Is the proponent here, please?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. Greg Antonelli, manager, 140 Tremont Street, LLC.
Thank you. Would you like to review what your plan is, please, sir?
So if I recall, when we left off the last meeting, we went through the plan, the site plan. There weren't many questions or concerns, and we continued the meeting. For what reason, I'm not sure, but I'm happy to go over it again tonight if you'd like, or if there are any questions or concerns that have come up in the last month or so, I'm going to address them.
Oh, we went over pretty much. The only comment we had at the time, Mr. Antonelli, was that parking space had to be 8 feet from the building, if I'm not mistaken, and you were going to correct that. Has that happened?
Matt, could you pull up the plan? I'm sorry, I don't have it with me.
Yeah, just give me a minute.
Thank you.
All right, can everyone see the screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Antonelli, you just tell me which page you want.
I think you want to go up to the first one, Matt, if you don't
Got
mind.
it.
Thank you. We're talking about the spot number 2 here.
That's correct.
Okay. So you would, I wasn't sure, I didn't remember, you had requested that the spot be moved so it's 8 feet off the building.
I think I requested that if we looked into being moved. I'm not, like I said at the time, I'm not quoting zoning ordinances here. It just appeared to me, if I remember, that you have to be 8 feet off of a building with a vehicle. That's certainly not 8 feet. And you were going to look into it in the interim. And I think that was probably one of the only things. We did have comments on the front porches, snow build up against the windows there on your front porch. You talked about redesigning them, type of fence, whatever. we did have conversations, but the one thing that was to be looked at was that parking spot number 2. Is that within the, is that a legal parking spot the way it's laid out? Meaning, is it too close to the building?
Yeah, so I asked my architect and I never really got a real firm answer either way. In my opinion, I think it's legal. I'm not a building inspector. I'm not a zoning inspector. The zoning in Everett states that there's no parking allowed in the front yard. So it's not the front yard?
No, it states that no, you can't park a car for obviously reasons, fume, you're parking it next to a window.
Yeah, I got that right here in the zoning here. It says it.
Hey, see,
There's no parking. Stall shall be located within 8 feet of any window or habitable rooms in the basement or first story of any building.
right, so and that's exactly what I brought up. It's got to do with, you know, parking a car, running next to a window, and they want you to be 8 feet. It's just
Right.
a simple remark.
Yeah, so I mean, I have probably 2 or 3 feet that'll get me the 8 feet if I shift it over.
Where are you shifting it over to? Greg,
If I move it here,
you're gonna shift it where? To the tree?
right to the property line.
Well, until you put that in writing on a print, it's going nowhere until we can see how you're getting 8 feet. Simple enough.
Well, then why don't we do this?
Yep.
We can do 2 things, whatever your pleasure is. We can either continue and I'll come back with a revised plan.
That'll be fine.
Take a pocket spot and base it on 7 spots if you'd like.
Whatever you want to come back with.
On, not 7, it would be 11.
I'm not telling you what to come back with. I'm just asking a simple question. I don't think that spot is a legal spot. And if you can show it 8 feet, that'll be fine. And if you lose a parking spot, that brings up another issue that you don't have enough parking there.
I'd have to go to ZBA for that. I'm going to ZBA anyway, so.
There you go. So let's get it out of the way. Move the spot over, show us a print, move it over, give us 8 feet, and then you can file for a variance, and that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
Okay?
It's fine.
That'd be great. Thank you.
No problem.
Good.
Can I also just chime in quickly? I'm just looking at my notes from the last meeting on this, and I think there was a question about gutters with the flat roof from Mr. Pisano, as well as just whether or not you had consulted the design criteria to look at vents and such things. So I didn't know if there'd be any updates to the board along those lines, as well as there were some questions about just dumpsters, trash location, barrels, things like that, that might go into the conditions on a decision on this.
So what would you like me to address? Am I putting gutters on the building?
I'm just noting the board
Sure,
questions
no.
in the last meeting
No,
because
absolutely. So I don't know if I'm putting
I
gutters on. Yeah, I don't know if I'm putting gutters on the building. I mean, that's really has nothing to do with the design of the building per se. The snow and trash, probably gonna be totes in this area here. Or barrels, and there'll be snow storage here. Anything else?
We can't really see where you point.
Yeah, I don't know where you're pointing when you're saying here and there.
So right here will be totes or barrels in this spot.
Well, you're saying this spot, but we don't see where you're pointing at.
Oh, you don't see, I have the
No.
arrow.
You know what I'm saying?
Sorry about that.
Yes.
Okay, so coming out the back door,
Yeah.
to the left of that,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, and then the snow storage will be in the back left corner.
Okay.
I have my arrow going.
Yep. Yep. I see it. Yeah.
Can you see my arrow?
I can see yours.
I can see a line.
I guess.
Okay. Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. What is the pleasure?
Pleasure would be for a motion for continuance to 48 Nickel Street to January 11th at 7 PM on Zoom.
Excuse me, before you continue, do you just want to double check if there's any members of the public here for this one?
Are there any members out there in the public like to comment?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chairman, this is David O'Neill, and not really with a comment specifically on this project, but with more of a procedural question. As we're required to come to the planning board for site plan review before we're presenting plans to the building department, how might one be advised to proceed on specific questions such as are raised by Mr. Pisano as to the building code compliance? This is planning board. So my understanding is our building code officer is the one who will tell our prospective builders what they need a variance for and what they don't. So I guess my comment is procedural and absolutely nothing to do with the merits of this project, but simply, and maybe it's not a question, but more of a comment, how would we know what we can do until we have it determined by our building inspector? That's all.
Well, I would answer that question, Dave, that an applicant presents a project to the planning board, along with presenting the project, there's supposed to be letters from each department explaining any problems. In this case, we didn't see any letters coming in from anybody. The fire department, the police department, and the building inspector usually informs us of any violations. And that would be a violation that would subsequently stop a site plan review if that's not a legal parking space. So since someone missed it, I'm assuming someone missed it, I brought it up, not as a procedural, but just as a missed comment. That's the way it's been done. Since I've been on this board, all comments from all departments are presented along with the applicant's package. That way we know if we're within the right to issue a site plan review. Go ahead, Dave. Let it go.
No comment.
May I speak? May I say something?
Agree with that.
Mr. Chairman, may I comment?
Yes, you may.
So I wasn't trying to ruffle any feathers, but since Attorney O'Neill did make the comment, I actually agree with him. The planning board, quite frankly, many times, and we've already discussed this many times over the last 10 years, comments and puts conditions on stuff that's really out of their jurisdiction. This parking spot is not a planning board issue. Attorney O'Neill is correct. It's a variance. The planning board votes on parking spots, not if it's legal or not. That would be up to the ZBA to decide or to grant that. I'll go along with it because in good faith, I want to work with the city. I love working with the city. Everyone's very good to work with. But moving forward, the city as a whole, this is a huge problem that now is being presented by all these builders and developers going to the planning board before they go to the ZBA. For the last 100 years or so, or as long as I can remember, the roles were reversed. You'd go to the ZBA to know where you stood, then you'd go to the planning board. My only recommendation to Copeland and Page and to Mr. Latanzi is, if the city is going to do this, there should be an ordinance drafted that says, here's our procedures, here's what our intentions are, and this is the way it works, because everyone is a little bit confused by it. 1 to 3 family, do you go to the planning board? Do you go to ZBA? Somebody wants to change a 3 to a 4, they go into the planning board. If somebody has a 6,000 square foot lot because the ordinance says anything over 5,000 square foot, there's a lot of gray areas and there's a lot of conflicting information. I'll do whatever the city wants, but there's a lot of people that don't develop here every day and don't know the drill and don't know what to expect, and they get blindsided by stuff. So I'll come back with a plan. I'll show the 8 feet. The only thing I can request or ask for, if there are going to be any conditions, if I could see a draft of them a week before, so I have any comments. I don't anticipate any or many or any at all conditions on this. It's a pretty straightforward project. I was wrong. Mr. Mastrocola did find the section of the zoning that says 8 feet, so that needs to be addressed, and I'll address it. But it needs to be more of a streamlined process going forward. We all know we lost a huge part of the zoning and building department, and Mr. Sopa was the best for so many different reasons. He coached, he educated, he advised, he helped everyone. So it's going to be a real big learning curve moving forward. And Mr. Latanzi probably has his hands full because he's playing a lot of different roles. So we all need to be patient and just try to work together moving forward. That's all.
We don't disagree with the fact of the way it used to be. And we're not the ones that changed it. We're the ones that have to function with the way it's been changed too. And I think if you have a zoning ordinance book and you look at section 19, site plan review, you might find
Right there when I was with that.
you might find that the planning board, one of the jurisdictions we have is the adequacy of the parking facilities and number of parking spaces provided for each development. Again, I say section 19, site plan review of the city zoning ordinance. We do have jurisdiction over the spaces on the site. Now, that's always been a bone of contention with us, because if we know there's not enough, we really can't shoot down the project because it has to go to the ZBA, whatever. But as far as to point out the simple fact that there was a parking spot in violation of a city ordinance, that's well within the board's jurisdiction to do so. And again, I point out, section 19, site plan review, give it a look-see. And we brought it up at the last meeting, and had a little bit of due diligence been done on it, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
I apologize for that.
That's true.
So, thank you.
Anyone else out there would like to comment?
I
just have one quick question. This is a point of clarification. Where exactly in the zoning does it say that the parking has to be 8 feet away? Could you cite what the section is? Yep.
See if I can go back to it real quick. It was on, let's see, I got page 17 of 102. I don't know if that does anything for you, but it's on, let's see here. I'm in the section 16, section 17.
Section 17.
So that goes down, and it's on letter M. It says, that's where it
17M?
says. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Is
That was my only question.
Is that the driveway ordinance by any chance?
Driveway ordinance?
Yeah, so we have a brand new driveway ordinance that also speaks to the setback in terms of how far away from a window you have to be. It may just be duplicative, honestly.
That's section 17.
Matt, this is,
No, that's,
it's off-street parking, Matt.
Off-street
Section
parking,
17.
17. Matter of fact, it's section 17, M, 8 feet
Yeah.
from the window. I mean, I haven't,
yes, that's what I got circled.
right, so that is in the ordinance. As it was pointed out at the last meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments in the Zoom world? Having none, the chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion for continuance for site plan review for 48 Nickel Street until January 11th on Zoom at 7 PM.
Second motion.
Motion has been made and seconded to continue 48 Nickel Street until January 11th, 2021. Roll call vote.
Leo Pizzano,
Yes.
Michael O'Connor,
Yes.
Cheyenne Rangel,
Yes.
George D'Angelo,
Yes.
and Chairman Cafaso.
Yes. Motion had been continued.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to everybody. Have a good night.
Merry Christmas. Merry
Smile,
Christmas.
Antonelli, smile. And you got your cousin moving into the area? No, Greg?
What is it?
Your cousin moving into the area?
We'll talk later. You don't listen.
Yeah, okay. Talk to you. All
Good
right.
night.
Night.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
Any other orders of business tonight, please?
There's a item on new business that appears on the agenda. The applicant has since withdrawn his application. However, I will still read it as it is on the agenda. So new business, item number 1 is an application by Daniel Santasuso for endorsement of an approval not required, an A&R plan for 139 Dartmouth Street. This is a proposal to divide a parcel into 2 lots, the second of which would not create a new buildable lot. The applicant therefore submits said proposal for a determination and endorsement that planning board approval under the subdivision control law is not required. And just to repeat, the applicant has since withdrawn his request. He just did so in writing after the agenda was submitted. So that's why it's still on the agenda.
So that's duly noted in notes for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Chair will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second the motion.
Roll call vote, please.
Leo Pisano,
Yes.
Michael O'Connor,
Yes.
Diane Rangel,
Yes.
George D'Angelo,
Yes.
and Chairman Cafaso.
I'm really not sure, but I will vote yes.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays.
Everybody have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you all. Happy holidays.
Thank you all.
Holidays.
Night now.
Enjoy.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Matt?
Merry Christmas.